Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We did it. We're going live. We are going to go live, and we are live. We're answering your questions as they come in. If we haven't met, first of all, welcome to the show, however you are listening, receiving this information. If this adds value to you, please like, subscribe, forward, post, tape it on your locker, the teacher's lounge, leave it at the Chick-fil-A, wherever you think somebody would receive benefit from it. So if we haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, Special Education Boss, training everyone that sits at the 504 IEP table to navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. We have 5,629 questions to get through. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do that in 10 minutes. And then we're going to talk about the Epic IEP. Why did I write the Epic IEP? Who is the Epic IEP for? Why now? And why for who? Is that good English? Why for who? So you guys, thanks for jumping on. Are you guys all traumatized by the time change? Like, are half of your watches and clocks and TVs not set correctly? And then, I don't know, I'll have to wait till my husband comes back home next week to reset them, because I did the oven and I did the microwave. It took me about 30 minutes, so I'll just wait till he comes back. So let's ask your special education questions. It's just me tonight. We have some of my partners are in the chat, so I'm going to answer questions that are sent in. These are good because they're a little bit longer than what we can just answer on our Monday night TikTok live. But questions about the book, yes, it's just me. I'm flying solo here with my polka dots. Do we like polka dots? Who doesn't like a good polka dot? I mean, it's like serious, but it says I'm also a little bit fun. So the Epic IEP, who is the Epic IEP for? It is for anyone navigating the IEP process. Can we agree that you have to navigate it? So it's a powerful playbook for parents, educators, and advocates navigating the process. At the end of each chapter, it has checklists for advocates, checklists for parents, checklists for educators, because we all want the same outcome, but we have a different purview and we have a different responsibility as it relates to the IEP process. So go over to Amazon, go get it, come back to the epic-iep.com, type in your information, and then we'll release $500 worth of pre-order bonuses for you guys, and you'll get a couple of the chapters ahead of time. It's really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. People ask me why I wrote the book, because I have so much information that I want you to have, which is why we put out so much content. I think it's funny that I put out so much content and people will say, when I answer a question, that I didn't answer the question. Maybe they should start a website saying, I answered the question. Obviously, I couldn't be on there. But we want you to have your questions answered. We want you to know how amazing an Epic IEP could be for your kiddos and how it changes outcomes. The book provides you the exact 7-part framework that I use for every single student that I serve. I do about 500 IEP meetings a year, and everybody that I've ever trained, any of my partner advocates, so that you can know the exact process. And, you should get this book for another parent. You should get it for a teacher, a special education teacher. I would love to tell you that all of our special education teachers are sitting there with the federal law book, the DSM-5 criteria, and the district is giving them all the special education law training that they need annually. Probably, maybe not happening. So grab one for you, grab one for an educator, and grab one for a friend that needs help in the IEP process. So let's get to some of your questions. I'm new to advocacy. I've been working with a case for 2 years, really fighting the school. This week they made a DHR report against the student's mother, alleging physical abuse. Have you found this to be common among school systems as a form of retaliation? I think in 29 or almost 30 years, I just seen about all the nastiness you can imagine in special education. I don't find it unusual that somebody calls and reports a parent with a child with disability But yes, sometimes there is pettiness and awfulness that goes back and forth. And so we do see that. Question. I hear that you have a podcast. I do have a podcast, Special Education Boss. I would be honored to be on your podcast. So if you would be interested in being on our podcast, Special Education Boss, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com, and we will get that process started for you. If you haven't downloaded our app, download our app at Special Education Academy. And so everything you need comes to the palm of your hand on an app. So some questions about the book. Karen, you've spent years on the front lines of advocacy. What's the pivotal moment that clarified your purpose in writing the Epic IEP and formalizing your work into a national movement? I mean, I think the pivotal moment was when the pandemic started in Friday, March 13th, 2020, and our governor came online and said the whole world was closing. And I was terrified that my clients wouldn't be able to get the support and resources and help that they needed in IEP meetings, because all of our IEP meetings were in school. And of course, then we pivoted and went online. And so that I started every weekday night, I would go on live in the great Face Place. You guys know about the Face Place at 9 o'clock at night. And I would go, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is not true. And just the response back from that was just endless. This is what I say, the need in special education is endless. The call is specific to whatever you do in special education. And I would love for everybody to be able to participate in Special Education Academy, where we train every Monday night. It's our amazing weekly academy to train you guys however you sit at the IEP table. I would love for people to be able to take the 2-day intensive. I would love for people to take the mastermind, and it's not realistic. And I think the book is the best way to get this information out to everyone impacted by special education in America, but really worldwide, right? There's special education everywhere. Different language, different processes, different acronyms, but the need is endless. And so people always say, do you have that written down? Do you have that written down? And so I worked with an amazing team to curate this book, and we have an amazing publishing team that we are working on with right now. And I didn't realize it was going to be so much work, but I'm very excited about how the work turned out. It really captures my complete heart and position. It's a book of hope. I believe that when you guys get this book, it's going to re-energize you to be in special education, however you sit at the table. And so this is my love note to you, right? If tomorrow comes and I'm not here, you will at least have this book to be with you as you walk through the process in a way that's actionable, but still making the technical legal part applicable. And so I think that we have so many books in special education, which are great academic books. And I love an academic book because I'm a nerd, but they're not necessarily useful for the speech pathologist in that moment, or the IEP lead, or the principal, or the advocate, or the parent, while they are a foundational piece of the processes, procedures, and protocols that we're required to do when we build an IEP. I find that most of them are just a little bit overwhelming and not necessarily a roadmap. And so this gives you a clean roadmap in how to write the Epic IEP to change outcomes. The points of the sections of the IEP, how you develop them, where that information actually comes from, and then it builds on each other, right? Everything in the IEP builds on each other. Most IEPs that we get are more confusing than helpful. And we have amazing educators that love kids and really, really want to help them. But, you know, I got an IEP the other day. It was 113 pages long. I mean, I have that many, blazers, but who's going to read a 113-page doc? It made no sense. It just had all of this stuff in it. And so, or we get IEPs that are 16 pages long that have absolutely nothing in them to tell us how to serve a kiddo. So I believe that this in your hands is going to change outcomes for kiddos. It's $28. You will get it shipped to you in January when we launch. And the pre-orders, when you come back and register at the epic-iep.com, it'll give you a free ticket to our live Mastery Summit, which will be February 6th for 6 hours. So as our gift to you for pre-ordering it. So we cannot wait for you to have it. All right. Let's see. My son turned 3 on Saturday. We have an IEP meeting. He qualifies for autism and speech disorder. I was told that he has to be on a wait list, and we will only receive walk-in services 2 times a week. What? Wait list. I was told the admin would be filing, when I told the admin I'd be filing a complaint with the state education agency, they asked me to give them a week. This list isn't short, with over 100 3-year-olds not getting services. And then she put the link for what's going on in Fort Worth ISD. So Fort Worth ISD obviously is a school district in Texas. I'm in Texas. I'm in the great Houston area. I believe Mike Morath, the special education director for Texas, just took over the school district. I don't know how that process happens. I would doubt that any state agency wants to take over a school district, but it had been non-compliant in many ways for a long time. And so the little that I know about it, and when I say little, I mean little, that occurs, and then hopefully states get them, back on the straight and narrow to serve kids with disabilities and, general education students as well. Let's see. Question, what do you recommend if students are constantly late due to a bus driver shortage and missing greater than half of their resource class? So, we have to implement the IEP as codified. What does that mean? We have an agreed upon annual IEP, and the district has an obligation, duty, and responsibility to implement it with fidelity. And part of that instructional day can't be cut short because of the school district not providing the student to the campus. And so I would certainly ask the district, when could we expect for this concern to be rectified? And then additionally, I would ask for compensatory time for the minutes that have been lost for the child. And so what is compensatory time? So compensatory time is not an IDEA, but it's in case law, right? And the intent of the compensatory time, because when you file a due process or a state complaint at the end, your request is relief. And so it's considered relief for the petitioner to return the student back to where they would have been had the IDEA violation not occurred. And so hopefully that would be rectified, the minutes that student has lost. What does the boss recommend for a high school student with autism that has one-on-one para support but continues to elope, evade the para and other adults in the building? So, as you know, I say things that hurt people's feelings, and I'm completely okay with that. I'm not a fan, have never been a fan, and not going to turn into a fan of one-on-one paras. I understand the purpose of it for a minute, for, when we're transitioning, those sorts of things. But to have a one-on-one pair with a student for the entire day, I don't know how we can really tease out the meaningful benefit and the harmful effect. I think they sort of intertwine. If you have a one-on-one para because your student elopes, I would say bringing them out into settings that are not highly supported with behavioral needs probably is not the least restrictive environment for that student right now, nor is the intention of a para or a level 1, 2, or 3A to chase children around the building. And so if that para support, which the IEP team put in place, is not meeting its threshold of its intention, then you have to look at a more supported setting, not just an adult with them all day long. All right, next question. Hey, I'm in Wisconsin. My son is 14 and starting high school next year. I asked them about driver's education accommodations, and they said driver's ed is separate from the school district. So no accommodations can be made, but yet it's taken at the school, and the school teachers are the ones who teach the written course and behind the wheel. Is this legal? I'm in Wisconsin. So the IEP is written for the instructional day for the student to have access to the general education curriculum. So I don't know that driver's ed is part of graduation requirements in Wisconsin. It might be. If it's part of state requirements and acquiring your credits to graduate, then possibility. As it relates to accommodations when you're actually taking the driving test, obviously you have to meet those same requirements as in anybody else. And when you take the driving test, you're not getting accommodations from the person from the Department of Public Safety or the Department of Motor Vehicles. When you're in the classroom, if it's a class delivered at the school, certainly if you have accommodations of, that are listed in your IEP, those should be implemented. All right. Hey there, my grandchild has an IEP for SLD and dyslexia. The school's dyslexia teacher went out on FMLA, and they stopped her services for 14 days. I realized that this is a violation of FAPE. When I found out through my granddaughter about it, I emailed the school and told them they had 30 days to notify me, so it wasn't a violation. Is that true? So it's sort of what they've told you is sort of a combination of a couple of things. So the district has an obligation to notify parents when 30 days have passed and there hasn't been a certified employee in that position. But either way, if you have missed instruction from a teacher and the person replacing that teacher was not credentialed, then you could certainly look at for asking compensatory time to be delivered. Question: if the entire IEP team thinks a child should be in an SDC class, social development class, including the parents, can the special education director say no? And if this happens, can a grievance be filed? So when we're at IEP meeting, we have 5 stakeholders. Say it with me, 5. Sometimes, though, we have lots of people from the district level who just pop into our meetings. Do you have that happen? They pop into a lot of my meetings. And so when we start the meeting, I say, we've listed 28,000 people that are here at the meeting. I will say first, who is the LEA representative? Who is the local education agency representative? That person is the person that, should there be a disagreement among members, that person and the parent make the final decision, agreement, or disagreement. So when you have a lot of people from the district level in the meeting, I'll just say, what brings you here? Why do we have 3 diagnosticians? Why do we have 3 principals? Why do we have 3 people from dyslexia? I mean, really, why do we have them here? Because I thought we're running low on teachers. I thought we're running low on staff. And it's interesting that when certain people come to a certain IEP meeting, that we just bring a bunch of people from admin. So if the IEP stakeholders, the LEA representative, the general ed teacher, special education teacher, the parent, and then the person that can do assessments and answer questions about assessment instruments, agreed that the least restrictive environment for the student was the SDC room, then that's it. So I often hear about IEP meetings happening, and then afterwards, somebody from the district, an attorney, I don't know, somebody just says no. So that's not how IEP meetings they work. They work upon the legal requirements of IDEA. All right. Next question. I'm looking for services for my 16-year-old who has an IEP and is also diagnosed with ADHD in California. I'm at a loss. Many places say they don't take my insurance. Please help. So if you're looking for an advocate, we don't take insurance because we're not billable. We are a service. But if you're looking for support for your IEP in California, we have advocates that teach, support, and train nationally. So you can just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com and we'll get you connected to one of our partner advocates. Okay, questions about the book, The Epic IEP. In your view, what's the most pervasive systemic issue in the implementation of IEPs today? What's the most pervasive issue? The unbelievable ability for districts to look parents straight in the face and completely tell them something that is not true at all about a myriad of things, right? Obviously, one of the things that's a hot potato right now is the overuse and misuse of paraprofessionals, but we sit in meetings all day long and hear all sorts of things. I was in a meeting last week, and as soon as we started the meeting, I started to address the IEP, the denial of FAPE. The student's been out of placement for a lot of days, and they immediately went into, this is the parent's choice. The parent wanted this. I said, no. So let's unpack that. I said, did you have an IEP meeting before you made the parents sign this piece of paper that has 3 sentences on it? No. Was there an invitation to the IEP meeting? No. Were the stakeholders there? No. Was a continuum of services talked about? No. Did you provide her procedural rights and safeguards? No. Was a prior written notice delivered? No. But this is what the parent wanted. No. The parent didn't run to school and say, hey, yank my kid out of school. That's a great idea. And it's amazing to me that they will give parents misinformation. And then we get back in the meeting, it's all the parent's fault. So let's not do that. Here's the good news. If you tell the truth, you won't ever have to remember what you said. So we're having our para webinar. Our para webinar will be this Wednesday, November 5th. Wednesday, November 5th at 7 p.m. Central, where we'll be talking about the paraprofessionals who are amazing and really the backbone of special education. their duties, responsibilities, limitations, what they can do and what they can't do. We'll be providing you state law, federal law, letters from OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs. And there's nothing new about this, right? I know your districts have told you that we got an exception from the state. Really, the state just said your district has an exception. Well, Karen, we are districts of innovation. And that means, and so we'll have letters from state special education directors. We'll have the statute that exists in NCLB, No Child Left Behind, and then of course has moved over to ESSA, Every Student Succeed Act. And so it's just the law. It's just the law. If it hurts your feelings that it's the law, I can't do anything about that. So the law expects for you to follow it, right? And IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is a grant program. It's a grant program that grants federal funds to states who have committed to meeting their IDEA obligations annually. So if you're wondering what your state's IDEA obligations are that they've said that they would fulfill, you can just look at, I think it's the 244th congressional letter. So every year there's a report to Congress on states and their IDEA commitments, obligations, and duties. Okay. All right. Next question. What are the? This is funny. People write me the funniest things. I need some help with my daughter's case manager to add a 504 plan with her IEP, and he is telling me no. Help, please. She just got diagnosed with ADHD. So, two different things. A 504 plan is a civil rights act. It's the Civil Rights Act of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It was never meant to be or intended to be this great educational replacement for an IEP. IEPs began December 2nd, 1975 with our President Gerald Ford reluctantly signing into law Educating All Handicapped Children Act, which then was reauthorized in the 90s and became IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So what's the difference? So an IEP is an individualized education program that has supports and strategies and goals and services, things that we're going to measure, things that we're going to mitigate, things that we're going to teach, specially designed instruction, which is delivered by a certified special educator above what solely the general education teacher could deliver. A 504 is solely a document that captures that you do have an identified disability, and based on that disability, you are in need of accommodations, and you cannot be denied those accommodations. So that is whether you're in school, whether you're an adult and you work somewhere, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 covers all of that. But really lean into if somebody at the school is really trying to convince you that you should have a 504 and not an IEP. There might be a reason for that. So if you guys want to know where to get the book, just hop on over to Amazon, pre-order it, come back to the epic-iep.com, put in your information, and that will unlock $500 worth of pre-order bonuses. We can't wait for you guys to get it. It's for everybody. Everybody. All right. How does your book equip parents and professionals to respond constructively? So it's not even about responding constructively. We are all partners building this document. We are all equal co-laborers building this document. And I can tell you that parents feel like more often than not, they're coming to the school's meeting and the school is telling them what the school is going to do. And so they don't often feel like equal stakeholders, nor do they understand the lingo that we all use, FBA, ESY, PCS, IHP, LRE, all of those things. And so often parents just sit there and just, and then they go on. And so when they know their part and, as the federal law calls them, the expert in the child, then we can equally write this IEP that will be epic, that will change outcomes for kiddos. The parent knows the most about the student. They just do. Sometimes I sit in meetings, I'm sure never at your meeting, and they will ask the parent what they want or what they would like, they're concerned, and then they go, and now let's ask the professionals. Really, we got to work on being dismissive of parents and IEP meetings. The meeting's about their child. It's about their child. And even if you're the world's greatest reading teacher and the most amazing principal and the world's greatest basketball coach, and you're probably all those things, the federal law, case law does not consider you the expert in the child. They consider the parent. And so this book was for all of us to write the IEP the same way and understand how important all of our positions are in our purview so that kids have successful student outcomes. Question about the book: advocacy often arises from personal experience. Amen to that. How does your own journey as both a parent and a public advocate shape the way you train others to engage with the school system? So, I don't know a lot of people that got into special education because it was just like, oh, this looks like a lot of fun. So for myself, I got into special education because I have a child with a disability 100 years ago and was sort of, catapulted into special education. My personal experience, while it's a unique story, there's nothing exclusive about it to me. I have the opportunity to train thousands of people weekly online and in classes and masterminds and weekly professional development school districts. And we hear the same story from parents all over the place, that special education for them has been a fight. And it's not the word that I came up with. It's literally the word that parents say to us when they come up to our booths when we're doing events. And we don't want it to be a fight. We don't want it to be divisive. We don't want it to be adversarial. But there has to be equity at the table. And we're an IEP team. So it would be odd that just one team member doesn't have access to documents, doesn't have access to drafts, doesn't have access to information that would change things, right? And so we've got to change that. The school is not the professional and the parent is the parent. We're all IEP team members. And until we start acting like that and speak like that, it will feel like it's the school and the parent. And it was never intended to be like that. IDA was built on the consensus model. It doesn't mean that we come to consensus. It does mean that we're able to articulate the other side's position with clarity. A lot of parents go to an IEP meeting. They don't even see the document. It's just read to them, parts of it. You have any questions? You have any questions? You have any questions? That's not how we do it to a legal standard. And so we want to make sure that everybody understands their procedural rights and safeguards that are afforded to the parent and to the individual with disability, and come back and build an IEP collaboratively that is going to be the most amazing thing for kiddos and really meets my mission statement, which is when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. And when we don't get it right for the child, we don't get it right for anybody. We just don't. And so I want us to stop doing the blame game. And so 'cause that does nothing for anybody, but to identify where there's a need. Where there is a need is honesty and transparency from leadership. And if you're a school-based member, you may like me, you may loathe me, but I'm not wrong. There's not always transparency from the school leadership. There just isn't. I know that 20% of my clients are school-based members, are school-based members. And if you think a parent sometimes is not treated so great at IEP table, you should work at a school district and have a kiddo with an IEP, and then you have questions and concerns. It might not be as warm and fuzzy as one might think. Okay? All right. Let's see. Next question I have. I'm getting a new student who is leaving a former district because the substitute principal called SAS when the student was self-harming without the consent from parents. They are now renting an apartment in our town, but also keeping their home in the other town. In addition to self-harming, he's also made threats to other students that he would hurt them. He has a diagnosis from the school district he left. He's been out of school for 2 weeks, but is set to start in my class this week. His IEP said he gets 300 minutes with an aide, and since I have a student teacher, our team said we will have to wait and see and only pull an aide if it's needed. Not transparency from leadership. The IEP says he gets 300 minutes. If it's in the IEP, isn't it needed? Not only is it needed, it's a requirement. The IEP is not a packet of suggestions. It's a requirement. It's actually the law. It's not a contract. Nobody signed a contract. It's the law. It's, at the end of the IEP meetings, have you ever guys seen when they are like, and now the principal is going to read the assurances. And the principal sits up and reads the assurances. Do you know why the principal reads the assurances? Because it's their obligation after taking federal funds to read the assurances. And then we all say, do we agree that the principal read the assurances? Isn't that kind of odd that we say that? Because that's the obligation, right? My question is, the principal is telling me that he doesn't have any other problems. but his IEP mentions that he has adaptive PE, he needs a scribe, and other things that have me thinking this is not the right placement without another support person for him. The delay in his start is because the other district had to plan for next year without spending some part of his day in the behavior classroom. They didn't think that based on the conversation with the principal that it would be needed. What do I do? Whew. So here's the rub with teachers, right? We get emails. The most emails that we get are not from parents. They're from school-based members. They're not from parents. It's from school-based members who their leadership has put them in some funky, junky situation, which nobody has to figure out. It's not ethical. It's not legal. And so what do? And so I would just reach back out to the principal in writing and say, I've received Billy Smith. I've received his IEP paperwork. Our obligation is listed out. So how will we meet those obligations as listed in the document? Please let me know. And then put that back on your principal. Question, would your book be informative Canadians, even though we don't do everything the same in the U.S.? Yes, it's going to be informative to anybody, however you sit at the table. I have a partner that's moving to across the pond to the UK, and we have different language, but the premise is still the same, right? How we build this document so that kids have amazing outcomes. And when parts of the IEP are missing or not comprehensive or not completed as intended, we're penalizing the student. Good question. All right, if at a school event, which part of the student's IEP to attend with their regular education peers, but the student disrupts the daily schedule, and it disrupts the student's daily schedule and causes the student to miss their regularly scheduled special ed minutes. Is the special ed teacher responsible for making up those missed minutes? No. If you have an assembly, if we have, the Chick-fil-A cow, if you have an event, if, the high school is coming over to do, the marching band down the hall, the cheerleaders, and we're getting ready for the football game because we're all going to state, those minutes don't have to be made up. So it says that in the document. Obviously, if there's inclement weather, if there is, if the student's not available, but if we have assemblies or those sorts of things, we don't have to make up those minutes. Question, what are the next steps if a school cannot accommodate a student? The school finds several alternative placement options, but the parents will not accept. So when we're looking at the LRE for a student, the least restrictive environment, which I wish that was called something different. I wish it was called the most supported setting, like a pair of pantyhose. When we're looking for the least restrictive environment, we're talking about as a committee, where's the best place to implement this IEP? Where can he have the most gains on his IEP goals based upon his needs, his unique circumstances in the right setting? So when the district has given an offer of FAPE at the meeting, the parents can agree with that offer, discuss that offer, counter that offer. If the district position continues to be the same thing, then you would come to a disagreement. At the end of that disagreement, the district has legal obligation to invite you to a reconvene. The point of the reconvene is that both parties go their own ways and come back with data to support their position and their differences on an offer of FAPE. We come back, the district still has the same offer of FAPE, even though the parents disagree with that. Then the state will defer to the LEA's recommendation. When you disagree twice legally, the state's going to defer to the LEA's recommendation. So if the parents disagree with that placement and do not want that placement to occur, they have to, 1, not waive their 5 days on the last disagree, and then 2, within those 5 days, find a way to file a due process hearing, to have an impartial due process hearing, and have a hearing officer in your state look at the components of your case, and that puts in process a thing called stay put, or under the law, pendency. And stay put means that the student stays in the same settings until these matters are resolved by a hearing officer. And stay put can go on for a very long time. I have a kiddo that's a junior, and we started the process of due process hearings when he was in 7th grade. So we've gone back and forth with appeals, and now we've appealed it at the 5th Circuit Court. And so those processes take a long time. So stay put can stay put a long time. Do we have the same goals? No, we don't have the same goals. But his setting, the way he receives his instruction in a general ed class with in-class support, that has stayed put. Okay? Let's see. Question, when providing a read aloud accommodation, can an assistant do the reading, or does it have to be a certified ESE teacher? We have a room with an assistant who's available to read tests at the high school. Is this acceptable? We also have some teachers who record themselves, read their test, and students can listen with their headphones on. I mean, they don't have to leave the classroom. Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that it needs to be a special educator to read a test. That's reading a test is not specially designed instruction. It's general ed content. So I would say in that instance, any qualified staff member could implement that accommodation. Question, what are the next steps if a school cannot accommodate the student and the parents will not accept? Again, you would have to go to a disagree and a due process hearing. What do you do when the school doesn't seem to care about anything? That is tough. Advocates, attorneys, nothing. They just don't deliver the service and nothing will change. If you file, then you'll have to fear retaliation for your other children. So, we get to those situations rarely, but we get to them. I just finished my third due process hearing with clients that I serve. I had one in August. I had one in September. We had one in October. It's unfortunate you get to this position. I'm always stunned at what school districts what rock they'll die on, when it would take so much, literally so much little effort to fix the concern that's going on right then. But sometimes you don't need an advocate, you need a realtor. Sometimes you just have to come to the realization, unfortunately, that what your child needs does not and will not exist at this school district. And that's a terrible position for parents to be put in, but it's also sometimes a reality, and it's very, very unfortunate. A question, I'm wondering if you can help me with my question. My son is currently in general ed math with accommodations and intervention for pullout. He's made progress this year, but the IEP from the school district proposes that he moves to a more restricted class, resource class. My question is, I know I can deny this placement, but is this school still required to leave him an intervention if I deny the resource class? Hopes this makes sense. Thanks for all you do. So I'm a huge, super big, huge fan of resource. You have to soberly look at, what does your child need? What we're providing, is it making expected progress? And so if the intervention, and I think that sounds like you agreed, was not making the expected progress, then I have to look at the student's unique circumstances, right? So when I look at general ed, and we can have general ed modified in a class, and then we have resource, which is also modified. So the question is, can your son stay in a general ed class, listen to the prosody and cadence of the general ed teacher, teaching those math state standards, then work on a product that's probably heavily accommodated or modified, and make expected gains? And sometimes that can happen, and sometimes it does not happen. So resource is under the federal code 300.115. It's the most expensive setting, usually in a public school. It's what we usually get the most pushback from. So could you file a due process on that? You could file a due process. But my question is the intervention in the general ed class working? I think that's the first question. And if you agree with the school district it's not working, then we have to do something different to support him, right? So in general ed, we can have general ed with accommodations, general ed with an IEP goal, general ed with an IEP goal and special education services, general education with an IEP goal, accommodation, special education services, and a special education teacher. We can have that class be a co-teach taught, but sometimes, we have to look to the next setting, okay? Questions, can modifications to the curriculum in the general ed setting, or is it only in the resource setting? Well, here's the good news. We don't really modify curriculum, right? There's not in Alabama, there's not a 7th grade history book in Alabama, and then there's not a 7th grade modified history book. So what we do is we modify the learner expectation. So, right, I'm teaching state standards, but then when he produces something in homework, an assignment, and a grade, and group work, and a test, then we modify his expectation. We reduce the number of state standards. We reduce the volume of work. We might take away one of 4 answers, but we would modify the learner's expectation But yes, we can modify the learner's expectation in general ed and in resource. Question, I have 6th grade students missing general ed science and social studies every other day for C grid writing services, working on writing 1 to 2 sentence responses. Can you use our second ELA block as they are ISEI students? That is their language block. No one above gives guidelines on where to pull these kids to provide services. Any advice? The block our building has set aside for services is already being used for them to receive C grid reading services every day. So a lot going on. So reading services and writing services, if it has to be an intervention or a pull out, should occur during that content area. You wouldn't pull it for math or science or social studies. For writing or reading, it might be part of social studies. Often that's embedded if it's at an elementary school level, but not science. So yeah, you would need that intervention to align with the time that you're doing that standard. Question for you. I love your content. It's fascinating. Is it fascinating? Thank you. When completing academic tests and a student scores 80 or lower on a subtest, would you complete another subtest in that area? I've worked with 2 or 3 different districts. One district has taught to give the student another subtest in that area to determine true weakness. The other district completes 1 round of testing and calls it a day. Is there any clarification on this? So what she's talking about is standardized assessment. So we defer to great diagnosticians, and I'm not a diagnostician, but I play one late at night. I think the diagnostic profile is so important, and I think that everybody in America should have a diagnostic profile. But whatever their assessment is, if you don't think that this is an outlier or there's not another determinant of why we're getting this number, the number is the number. Certainly, like when you do any testing, make sure that it's a good day for the kiddo. We're getting good outcomes. You might have to break it up. But no, there's no requirement that if you get 80 that we have to do something different. If you believe the evaluation that you are doing is delivered with efficacy and fidelity and ethically, then those numbers are those numbers. Question, can a high school in Michigan lower a special education student's, can a high school in Michigan lower a special education student's grade for attendance? The school policy for attendance in the handbook does state that grades will be lowered after 3 absences per quarter if they're not made up. Yuck. What? Wow. Should this apply to special education students? I don't think it should apply to any students. A friend of mine, Marcy Lipsett, which is an amazing advocate. She actually has a Facebook group called the Michigan Department of No Education. You should probably go follow her. So what are we doing, Michigan? What are we doing? There's probably a reason the student is absent, whether you're a general ed student or a special education student. But I've never heard of absences making your grade lower. Who thought that up? But, Michigan, maybe they did that. What is the question? What is the law has to do with special education kids need to have access to the general ed curriculum? The PE and music teachers are denying my kids their right to be taught in general ed classes from the self-contained class, and I have met with them this week, and they said they have autism. They can't do what others say. What? So what is the law that talks about kids have access to the general ed curriculum? It's the least restrictive environment. The least restrictive environment says that we educate students to the maximum extent possible with their non-disabled peers with strategy, supports, and services. And so they have access to the general education curriculum. So we educate students in ancillary, elective, or those classes when it's appropriate. We have the right support, and they can get meaningful benefit from it. But I'm pretty sure that PE has general ed curriculum as well. People, what are we thinking? I think, we're just all there guessing, which is why somebody needed to write the book, the Epic IEP, so that we know our duties, obligations, and responsibilities collectively, and that we can have a book that's understandable, but actionable and changes outcomes for kiddos. Because we're all just kind of doing our thing, and it's not helping kiddos often. Question from Ashley. My daughter's current signed IEP states that she will have a contracted RBT as her one-to-one. The reason for this is the school has had 20 people working with my daughter in an instructional year, which has caused extreme behaviors for her. We had a meeting the other week and we agreed on private day placement, but during the wait for private school, they want to put my daughter on homebound with 5 hours from instruction from a teacher at my home a week. I can refuse homebound and keep her at school. Can I refuse homebound and keep her at school while we wait for private school? So, I mean, you can do whatever you believe is best. If your child is unsuccessful at the public school and we've agreed to private, I would like to think that staying in the public school right now is not the best setting. Although homebound is probably not optimal, but that might give you the bridge that you need while you're waiting for an opening in that private school. But yeah, these things do happen if we have we're waiting for an opening in a school, or sometimes when kids are at out of district psychiatric units, we have to wait for a bed to open. So that does happen. Question, I'm a BCBA who's been working with a family, 2 sons as clients for therapy for over a year. One boy has an IEP, 4th grade, and recently got sent home with a minor disciplinary referral saying no and walking away. Really? We're sending kids home for saying no. Parent asked the teacher for more information and got the response from the teacher. He was being disrespectful and needs to learn in life that you must obey people. It was 2 full paragraphs of this. They have an advocate and asked the mom and the advocate if an ADR, I think she meant an MDR, should be requested. The manifestation determination resolution meeting. The advocate told the mom separately that no, she doesn't need to have an MDR because the school offered an IEP in 2 weeks. I filed a complaint with the district, but then the advocate responded saying there's miscommunication from our team. We're fine with proceeding with the planned IEP meeting. Thoughts? I feel like I'm being gaslit for sending in a formal complaint, and this teacher inappropriately communicated with a student with special needs. The teacher gave an example saying if he's driving and gets pulled over by a cop, he can't flee from the police, hence he ends up with major consequences. He needs to recognize that he gets plenty of positive praise and rewards, but when he is rude in a defiant way, he has a negative consequence as a result. So if him, in your opinion, being rude and responding in a negative way is a characteristic or an outcome or part of his unique circumstances, then it's part of his disability. And so just like somebody taught me algebra, I think they did, we could teach him replacement behaviors. But punishing a child for their disability would be like, discriminatory, right? And so, and the phrase, kids need to learn to obey, it makes me cringe. It makes me feel like it's 1970. Do kids need to follow directives of adults? Absolutely. Absolutely. But we have to individualize kids with disabilities and teach them replacement behaviors. Often we give kids with disabilities a disciplinary action that doesn't even change the outcome, or they don't even understand the consequence. But saying no and walking away from a parent, I don't know how that is a disciplinary write-up, but that is me. Okay, how can a school tell a parent that they don't see autism in their child, all because the child does not do the hand flapping? So, a couple of books that I recommend for everybody to have. Let me just get them for you off the floor, which is where I do most of my best work. You guys have things stacked on the floor like I do. So, a couple of books that you should get. So this is the DSM-5 criteria, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition. So the great thing about the DSM-5 criteria is it will tell you the medical criteria as it relates to autism. So you can look at those 16 characteristics. And then additionally, you're going to want to have, the federal law. I'm sure your school has a copy of this, probably, right? It's probably in the waiting room. Where they have People magazine, they probably just have one of these laying there. So if you just go to our bookshelf on Special Education Academy, you can get both of these books. This will teach you the characteristics of autism and, of course, the federal law. So autism presents differently in different kiddos. It's a spectrum. It's pervasive. It moves. And so we want a robust evaluation to talk about any of those characteristics. So an education eligibility of autism means a deficit, a severe deficit in verbal and nonverbal communication, usually prevalent before the age of 3, that impacts social, that verbal and nonverbal communication and social interactions. And so there are kids with autism that have never flapped their hands before in their life. There are kiddos with autism that we might say have classic characteristics, but it presents differently in each individual. And we need to make sure that we're not just making assumptions, because some of the visual output by some individuals with autism we do not see. All right, question about the book, the Epic IEP. Did you guys all get it? You guys all went and got one. Thank you. Thank you. Advocacy is important. So many resources already exist on special education law and policy. What gap were you intentionally trying to fill with writing the Epic IEP? What makes it distinct in its approach and accessibility? So I think there's a lot of books on a parent's journey in special education. There's lots of books on a parent's journey with specificity about a specific disability. There's tons of law books. There's tons of books on assessments. There's tons of books on obligations under the law. And I have all of them, but I didn't really find a playbook that this is how we run this play. This is how I write an IEP, whether I'm advocating for somebody in the Kodiak Islands or in Miami-Dade County. These are the exact 7 frameworks that I move through every client that I serve, through every client that I do a state complaint, a due process hearing, a federal complaint with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, a records review. This is the exact same process that I use and have taught and have trained for almost 30 years, since I was tiny and had a thyroid. And I wanted to put in a cohesive book that you could use, whether you're a parent, educator, or advocate, because we all sit at the IEP table and we all have an important role, but they're different. And then at the end of every chapter, we have a checklist for parents. We have a checklist for advocates. We have a checklist for educators, so that we're not so busy populating the paperwork, because we've gotten so used at school to, this is the paperwork we're using now. We're using Success Ed. We're using Frontline. We're using eSped, which the E stands for excruciating, right? That we've spent so much time training people how to fill out the paperwork that we've lost sight of what was the point of the paperwork, instead of just filling out all of these boxes and have to fill out that box. So this is, you could write an Epic IEP on a piece of paper. So it's going to be a game changer, and it gives us the same language so that kids win. Okay. So you can get it it's available at 130 book fulfillment. Most people just go to Amazon because they have an account, pre-order it, come back to the epic-iep.com, put in your information, and then we'll unlock $500 worth of pre-order bonuses. All right, 2 more questions and then we're gonna log off. Thanks you guys for being on tonight. It means everything to us. All right, so this question, this doesn't affect me directly, but I was talking to a mom today about a situation in her daughter's VE class. The certified ESE teacher quit, and now a long-term substitute's in the room. My understanding is the long-term sub doesn't have to have the qualifications. Wonder who told you that. I know her, and we are in the PTO together. How long can a long-term sub collect data and do IEPs if they're not certified? The mom was so upset, and I would be too. Here's how long they can do that. They're not qualified to collect data on IEP. I'm not qualified to collect data on IEP. I'm not a teacher, I'm not a para, not a special educator. I'm not one of the stakeholders. So long-term subs are people that have been hired by a district to fill in for credentialed and qualified employees. And does that happen? Absolutely. Is that special education if they're not certified special educators? No. It's just not, right? And, there's an unholy alliance with parents and school districts. I had it for my 3 kids. My parents had it when I was growing up. There's something about it, the school says something, then it is the truth. Like you don't have to call Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. Like it is, if the school said it, you can take it to the bank. And because of that, like unwavering blind trust, parents just believe what school districts tell them. When school district leadership know that it's not true at all. It's not, the blind trust is actually a lie. It's a lie. And so we're just so used to it that nobody ever says anything. And heaven forbid you say anything. People don't like it if you say anything. So your child is either being delivered a free appropriate public education, and we've implemented the IEP with fidelity, or they're being denied a free appropriate public education. It's just one of two things. The reason for the denial doesn't change the denial. It doesn't, right? When our districts were closed in Houston for 22 school days during Hurricane Harvey, it was still a denial of faith. It was, right? It doesn't matter what the reason is. You either implemented the IEP as codified or you didn't, right? And so schools have quite, the very wonderful phrases and conversations that sort of elude sympathy and evoke sympathy from parents, and they feel bad. And there's nothing wrong with feeling bad. However, do you think the school district is going to call you and say, listen, half of fourth grade your daughter didn't get, we would like to replace that? How many of you guys have ever gotten that call? Anybody ever got that call? No. You know why? Because nobody calls them on it, right? And so I'm going to call you on it if I'm advocating for a child and they have service minutes and you're not delivering them. I'm really going to call you on it if you've lied to the parents. Parents, I always say when I'm training advocates, with great care and caution, if you want to be an advocate, you better be in the service business. We are here to serve people. But this population, parents of kids with disabilities, are the easiest population to manipulate. They just are. And so the fact that leadership, who's been given the gift of persuasion and uses it for manipulation, I think is the grossest thing ever. I do. It's not any different than if your child was at a hospital and they said, oh, your child's getting their medicine, and they never gave them the medicine. Would that bother you? It should. It's illegal. I don't know when I say something's illegal at a school that's not right for me to say that. It is. And I'm going to stand up for kids, and I'm going to stand up for parents who have been misled for sometimes a little while and sometimes for a very long while. And who's paying for it? The child. The child is the one that pays for it. So let's get it right. Let's write the Epic IEP every time we sit at the table. Go and pre-order it on Amazon. Come back to theepic.com, put in your information for your pre-order, and we'll release $500 worth of pre-order bonuses for you guys. And that will also include a free ticket to the 6-hour live summit for the Epic IEP Mastery Summit. We cannot wait for you guys to have it. It's so stinking good. Such great stories. It's going to tear you up and then, equip you to get back in the game and serve kiddos with disabilities at the highest level. We love you guys. Remember, if you need anything, just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. Remember, we get it right for the child. We get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in the next training. Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.